Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're listening in from. I'm Ben Weatherford, and I'm reporting live from Decisions World headquarters in Chesapeake, Virginia. We hope everybody is doing well today, and wherever you find yourself. We have 1 hour to address any questions that come to mind. So please, anybody, feel free to open up chat, any attendees, and toss in your questions. And then let's see here. We've got some pre-sent in questions from Muriel. Muriel, great to have you on the call today. I see you and Jeremy on. Perfect. Let's go ahead and address some of the questions that you sent in. Just a moment here. And then there we go. All right, so we've got our question is there are two types of failures, a failed count and a note. And the last run detail that they can see is failed. So the state is failed for the flow. One's referring to the job itself not running, and the second is not completing successfully. Can anybody confirm this? Okay, Muriel, let me go ahead and actually share my screen here. Before the call, I went ahead and set up a scheduled job to showcase some of this example. So we've got this failed count here, and then this is how many times the scheduled job has been queued up and has failed to go through all the way. And then if I select it, right now, based off of current 7.0 configurations, I don't have any information about the stage failing. Your general instincts are correct, Muriel. The count is how often it executed and hit an unhandled exception. So if I just, the same way that you might run a flow and then get a prompt saying, hey, the flow failed to end, or you hit something that we couldn't quite understand what was going on, that's what'll happen. It'll catch it here, it'll add to your fail count, and then it'll increment it, and everything from that point should be fine. The stage that you're seeing, the stage failure, is expected to be seen in a situation where it didn't even kick off it potentially didn't even kick off the scheduled job. But I have sent I forward this question to the devs so that they can confirm for me whether or not that's the case, or if every single time that you hit a failed count, it should actually set the whole workflow or scheduled job catalog item to stage failed. So let me, once I hear back from them, I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right, and then following up on that, let's see, we have another question here from you. For the two types of failures, notify user on failure work with. I believe it's if it fails to even execute the scheduled job, it'll notify a user, not if there's an unhandled exception. Typically, what you'll want to do is have catch exception steps inside of your scheduled jobs so that you can define how you want to handle that kind of exception if something occurs that you might anticipate during the design of your flow.
Okay.
And then let's see. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the last question was, what does that do? Does that create just something in the inbox, or does that actually email them?
Yeah, if it actually fails to execute overall, it'll do both. Should create like almost exactly the same way as you get the default task for default notifications. If you don't set something custom up, it's the exact same way for if a scheduled job fails to execute. It'll send the email, and it'll also assign a task to the user.
Perfect. That's what I needed.
Perfect. And then, yeah, I'll follow up with you to make sure that the first question is appropriately answered.
Okay.
Just because I'm not 100% sure if that state failed is tied to the entire workflow catalog item failing. If that does happen, it's possible that the whole scheduled job queue got locked up somehow, or some other configuration issue. But
so
again,
you mean the one that you look at within, if you highlight the job, not the failed count, but the other one.
Correct.
So what I noticed, or what I think happened, is in the screenshot that was in my question, the failed count was at 0, but the internal marking said failed.
Correct. Yep.
In that case, it failed because someone, for some reason, decided to dump a 3 gig file in a list it was running through, and it won't handle that. So it ran, it started, but it didn't finish.
Interesting. I wonder if it literally locked up the whole queue, and then what happened is it didn't increment the failed count purely based off the fact that the whole thread essentially broke.
Okay, so we discovered that by running it through the debugger, which of course just hangs there. So, but I mean, it didn't lock anything up. It just said there was a 2 gig file there, and we knew there shouldn't be a 2 gig file there. So then we went and looked, and someone else is using the directory. So.
Okay. Yeah, curious. I will send this forward to the dev, see if they have any insights here.
Okay, and once I create a 2 gig file, because it's at a client site and they won't send it to me because it's got bank data in it, I can recreate it because I know what made it happen, but I haven't created a random 2 gig file yet to do that. So.
Right. And is it possible that it's timing out when you're generating that file?
No. So it's another system is dumping a series of flat files. We expect there to be 6. And someone must have created new ones and said, well, just drop them where the other ones go in the same directory. So instead of cycling through 6 files, it was trying to cycle through 24 files. On the 19th file, it said, I don't know what to do with this, and stopped.
Okay. And that's because at that point, I assume there was some kind of, it was essentially a memory failure at that point.
I mean, when I clicked on the details of the job, it legitimately said it exceeded the file limit.
Yeah.
So it doesn't care if we have unnecessary files in there, just the size of them, apparently.
Well, it could be. And again, I don't want to speak just for the devs because this is more of a development question. But we do have a limit to the cache size for a particular execution of a flow. That's set in your settings XML file that you can modify and adjust if you need to. But if it was hitting that cap and then causing an issue from there, that's possibly why it all kind of ended execution at that point. But that is surprising. But now you've got it changed to cycle to just 6 files instead.
Well, they're going to tell them not to dump their files in the same directory because it's not supposed to be there. So yeah, we've come up with a fix for that, but the person who was monitoring the server just happened to look for some reason at the scheduled jobs because it didn't notify anyone. So that's what we wanted to figure out is how does the notification work? If that internal one is the only thing that failed, how would we know that?
Right, I get you. Well, because of the fact that you got that internal failure on the actual execution of the flow, and it was still executing, it just hit a failure. What I would probably do is I would go to your flow, and then whenever I have any flows, and especially ones with low visibility like scheduled jobs, I would always
yeah
exactly before anybody's awake. I would always do a catch exception step into something like an add task, and that way you can customize what information gets provided and make sure you have full visibility.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what we will do then.
Perfect. Hey there, Mike. I see your question here. Let me go ahead and read that out. You want to set up a triggered flow in a case entity. It sends out an initial notification, and after 5 days and no response to the case moves to the next state and sends another notification. After 5 days, it moves to the next state and repeats. Each state is a different notification. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at how that would look in decisions. So I'm going to create a quick example. Oh, whoops, did I create a, oh, I created a normal folder, whoops. All right, so let me create a case very quickly. Go away, little sharing thing for Zoom. All right, so you're saying, let's see, let me just reconfirm. That's an initial notification, and after 5 days and no response to the case moves to the next state and sends another notification. Now, what you could do, and there's multiple ways to approach this problem, and it also depends on if there's more states than just the ones that you're pending some kind of person to take a look at. But one of the easiest ways we can accomplish this is if you want to set it up and kind of have bespoke logic, we'll say first notification and then second notification. And I'm not sure exactly how, we'll say send notification as a trigger flow. So whenever it hits this state, it'll kick off this flow. You could do whatever you want. You can send an email. You could have them. And Mike, very quickly, is it a full task or just a simple notification, something like an email?
I think for right now, just a notification. I think within I think there would like to be a task within the case. So, for each, the case could be assigned to somebody, and it's it's waiting on that person's submission. And so if they don't get that submission by that person it's assigned to, then it would move to the next state after 5 days, move to the next state, and then complete or escalate to another state. So okay, that's kind of the scenario.
Yeah. All right. One example here of what you could do is, if you wanted to, you could set it up as a task with certain kind of warning and late criteria that automatically had their own pathways, and you would set up, okay, I'm going to compute the date and say it's a task that has to be responded to within 5 days, and they could click it and then they could continue down that pathway. Or if it expires after 5 days, it automatically moves down the pathway to set a new state. For our example, I'm going to make it really simple and just say it sends an email and say that's our example to somebody at some place with a subject of something in the body of whatever. And what I'm going to do is we're going to set up a scheduled job really quickly that runs daily, and it checks for all the cases, and it checks for how long they've sat in this particular state. And then if it's set in this particular state, send notification. I'm sorry, what did I name this state? First notification. If it's set in first notification for more than 5 days, I want it to go to second notification. And so what we could do there is, I'm gonna create a scheduled job. I'm going to go to my scheduled jobs. And this way you can, again, execute this however often you want. If you need it more real time than that, it's not just something that you can run once a night or something, where you actually need it exactly 5 days down to the minute or the hour. I would suggest doing a compute date time on an actual real decisions task. That way, if it's 3 p.m. now and it needs to be exactly 3 p.m. next week, business days, when it goes down that pathway, then you can control exactly when it executes. But if it's roughly 5 days, then something like a scheduled job would be better. And I'll create a new scheduled job called check and push cases. I'll say push cases to next state as an example. And what this is going to do is it's going to fetch all of my example cases first. I call it just case example. And then I'm going to actually filter all of my cases by the ones that I care about. So if I filter, oops, rule collection filter. And I say, hey, I really only care about the ones that are in this particular state. Let me open up another tab so I can see, because I can't remember what I called it. First notification. And so I'm going to say, I only want to get all of the cases on first notification. And if there's no results, I'll just take that to the end. And I could say, I'm going to fetch cases. And I'll actually give it a new name. I'll just say all my cases. The rule collection filter here, these are really useful. What these do is you essentially take a list of objects and you run a rule against each of the objects. And if they pass the rule, they get passed out. If they fail the rule, then they do not get passed out. So all we're going to do is we're going to write a quick rule that says, is the state equal to first notification? And then there's going to pass out a list of items where it's all in those states of first notification list. And I'm going to pass in my collection, which is all my cases. And I'll call this filter non-first or filter first notification cases. All right. And let's go ahead and edit this flow. Now what it does is it sets it up into single object units that you can check against. So if you select data elements, it's going to have this generated object for you called entity. This will always be the case when you create a rule collection filter. And so I'm going to select my entity. And then so it's essentially the same as like a for each loop where you say, okay, well, I have an item that I want to check, a single item that I want to check things against. I'm going to have a state here under my, where is it hiding? Under my extended folder. So whenever you create a case, it creates kind of two different records, one in your case table and one in your folder table. Your folder actually contains all the metadata, things like who created it, if they've deleted it, when was it created, blah, 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 including the state. So the state is part of the folder object. And we should be able to find right there, state. And then we'll say if the state equals, and I called it first notification. I'm just going to copy that for, there we go. And if I wanted, I can do multiple different filters or multiple different things. I could say, hey, look for first and second state cases. If I have multiple states I want to look through and filter for our purposes, I'll just keep it really simple. And then I say, okay, well, I've got a whole list now of all of the different cases that are in the state first notification. Now I want to see if any of them have been in that state for more than 5 days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a really simple for each loop. Oops, for each. And there's multiple ways to do this. It doesn't have to be a for each loop, but this will be a fairly simple example. For each case, I'm going to pass it the list of filtered cases here. Actually rename that to make it, oh, first notification list, that's what I called it. I might have to close that and come back 1 second. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so I've got items. I'm going to call these, this is a case, and I'll call this a case index. Just keep it named appropriately. I'll say for each case, I want to find out, okay, what's the current time versus what's the, when was it created? Or when did it hit this state? So I got to say, okay, well, when did it hit this state? It was probably, X amount of time. What I can do is I can fetch, and I can say, get folder state event. and I can go grab, because we actually record when things change states. So we can make all of this happen pretty easily. And so I want to grab them from the folder state table. And the folder state table, I'm going to grab by criteria folder entity folder ID, which is the folder it's associated with these events of when I'm changing states. And I want to say, I want to get the enter folder ID, entity folder ID for this thing where the to state being the state that it went to. And then I'll be able to filter. The to state is first notification. And the entity folder ID is the specific item that I'm looking at. So that's going to be our case. And our case ID, entity ID. This one is actually your folder ID. It's replicated over. So we can go ahead and hit OK on that. And then I'll save. Now what's going to happen is we're going to say, all right, let's filter down to just the cases where they're set up in the first notification state. Let's go through each of those cases. And for each case, we're going to go and find out from the folder state if we have a record where it essentially notified when we changed states. So we're looking for where it changed to first notification, and then we'll have a date time associated to when that occurred. Now what we can do next is we can get the time span between. Get time span between. Oops. If there's no results, we'll go back. So clearly we shouldn't have gotten any results back if it's not actually in this state, but realistically we'd probably throw an exception or something here, because it'd be weird if we had something in the first notification state, but there was no record of it happening. Next, we would say on the get time span between, we're going to give it the 2 dates. The current date is the current time is the first or the second date. The first time is going to be our result back from this guy. Now we only expect one result back, but it's possible that we could potentially get multiple results back if your states are going to different notification, or I'm sorry, if your cases are kind of transitioning back and forth between these different notifications. So if you went from started to first notification, second notification, and then back to first notification, you could have 2 records show up. I'm going to operate under the assumption that you'll only ever have 1 record for the time being for this example. But there is ways that we can go around this. So for our example, we're going to assume that you only have 1 result back. So I'm actually going to change this to show path for 1 result. And so I'm going to take my result here. If I have multiple results, I'll just go to the next and assume it's an error for our example. That's fine. All right. So I'm getting time span, and I'm going to pass in the timestamp of when it hit that new state. So, oh, let me give it a better name. For ours, we're going to call this the first notification record or change record. We want to figure out how long it's been since that was created. Okay, there we go. And then when we're done, we're going to take this and we're going to say, all right, if it's greater than 5 days, greater than or equal to, but and the timestamp, the time span is going to give us what we need here. But if this value that we get back, let's see, where's my time span? I'll actually rename this as well. Time since new state. And then let's see. So on the time since new state, I'm going to check on the days. And then I'll just use this days variable. And I'll say if it's been more than or equal to 5 days. And I'll say if this is false, we'll go on to the next record to check it. Oops. Or the next case. Greater than 5 days. And then if it's true, we'll want to do something, right? Well, we might want to just move it to the next state. Well, what's really cool is we can use the same step here as with a lot of things. Set state is pretty generic, or I'm sorry, set entity state. What this is going to do is just set it to the next state. And since we have a stateful system, this is all we're going to have to do. And it'll pick up on the next notification flow and everything else will be fine. So when it goes to the next item, it'll automatically kick off the next trigger flow. So send notification is happening here. And once I change it, I'm going to use this one single step to send it to second notification. And it's going to kick off the same send notification. Let me go ahead and actually just change the classification on this really quickly, because I want this to happen in second notification too. We'll say it's the exact same notification. All right. And so we're going to set state to second notification for these ones. And I need to give it the ID of the thing I want to change and then the new state. So the new state is just second notification. And then the ID is the current case that I'm looking at. It's entity ID. And I'm going to save, and then we're done. So this flow that I just created is able to go through all your cases, filter out the ones that you care about which state, and then start grabbing time spans for when a state change occurred, and then check against right now, see if it's been an X amount of time, and then it'll set all of those ones that it's been more than 5 days to the new state. The easier way to do this is if you have a send notification, and instead of just the send email, if you'd like, you can also set it up as your add task. And then whenever you add a task, you can give it a quick assignee. You can set it to system or something, or I'm sorry, to the individual user that you want to notify. You can give it a quick name for what you want the notification name to be. Do things. I'm just going to fill this out really quick. Assignment. And then what we have here on tasks is if I scroll down just a little bit to assignment setup, I'm able to edit this. And in here, in assignment setup, we get a whole collection of different configurations that we could sign up for this task. Even if I don't care whether or not it's an actual user experience somebody has to go through, I can still set up this task just so I can maintain good metadata around this thing and be able to set up things like warning, escalations, what I want to do in different scenarios. So if I scroll down a little bit here on this configuration, I'm going to see I can specify a start date. Maybe I don't even want to start this thing until 2 days after it hit this state. I can specify warn, late, expiration, escalation. I'm going to set an expiration date. And I'm going to throw an exception. Or maybe I'll just expire without that. And I'm going to say, when does this thing expire? Whenever we're going to compute this. And I'm going to say it expires whenever, set a constant here, after 5 days. And what's going to do is there's going to be a new button or a new pathway for assignment timeout where I can say, all right, well, maybe I have an approve and deny pathway based off of the form that I choose. Let me just go ahead and select that. Set that up. Since that's a more realistic example, I'll do approve and deny so that we can see that there's other outcome paths besides just our there we go. So whenever I add this task, I have an approve, I have a deny, and then I have an assignment timeout. Well, what I can do is if there's an assignment timeout, I can use that same set entity state step that I used in my scheduled job. And I could just say set state second notification, and do the exact same thing. And choose the folder ID. And then it'll automatically move it on to the second notification and just continue from there. So those are two different ways that you can tackle that issue, Mike. It really depends on whether you want to do it as kind of like a batch thing, or if the specification of exactly 5 days is really important.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. I appreciate it.
All right,
thanks.
Perfect.
Hey, Ben, I believe Murray dropped a question about a document in the chat.
Question about the document chat. Let me pull up chat. Just a moment. Okay, so let's see. Ariel asked, is there a document available that would walk through all the prerequisites for a local installation of version 7 or 6 for that matter, that is assuming that the user, me in this case, has no reason for there to be any, that is assuming that for the user, me in this case, has no reason for there to be any .NET or SQL Server instances already installed. So to clarify, Muriel, are you saying, do we have any guides to walk you through that installation of .NET Core and SQL Server, as well as the Decisions installation?
I don't know that I need to be walked through the installation as much as I need to know what pieces need to be there. Every time I try and do it, and then I try and run the decision and install, it doesn't work. And someone says, oh, that's because you don't have block. Well, how was I supposed to know I needed that?
Fair enough. I'm pretty sure our documentation on the matter has gotten better over time. It didn't used to be quite so clear, but the self-hosted installation documentation should cover everything that you need for an installation. At least, so, now keep in mind, 6 and 7 were very different.
Right, and I don't mean a self-hosted as in, I mean a local as in I'm the only person who's ever going to use it. Nobody else needs to see it. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Installation requirements for self-hosted environments. And let me make sure it actually has everything here. Nope, hold on, not that one. Make sure. Requirements. Yeah.
I was
so
just in the process of linking these. I'm sorry. So I was just like getting the links right for you in the chat. So post it in just a minute. Yeah, your recommendation's spot on. I was also going to suggest the next installation guide, just so once the prerequisites are read, the step-by-step guide and installing it is right there.
Yep. Yeah, this one should cover everything you need. This installation guide on our documentation for 7. And I would probably, especially since you're just trying to set up on your local, I wouldn't suggest an IIS installation. So this should be perfectly fine. Let me just confirm. So the only thing that this isn't specifying is it doesn't actually go through that you needed Microsoft SQL Server set up before the Decisions installation. It went straight from .NET Framework and .NET Hosting Bundle straight into download Decisions. But you also need to download the SQL Server and set up your SQL Decisions. Your Microsoft SQL Server before then, which should be. I don't know if we have an installation guide for SQL Server, but that will be necessary. If you don't have one.
Oh, well, I have parts of it. Do I need the server manager?
Having the SQL Server Manager is definitely highly suggested. That way you can set some configurations that you'll need. And I think it's gone over here. If it's not, that's a problem. Let me see. Let me see if on 6 it goes through that self-hosted part.
It should be on the installation requirements under database server configuration, I believe.
Is
SQL
it?
should be the first one listed under there, under the installation requirements page on the top. There's a subsection in it for a database server and configuration.
Oh, there it is. Yep, perfect. Okay, so this over here on the left-hand side, under installation, and start here, this installation requirements, and then the installation guide afterwards. Okay, yep.
Okay, and so that goes through the, where does it say that I need server manager, or that it's recommended? I'm sorry. Because I thought I read all these.
Yeah, I would recommend having SSMS. That way, this part is easier for setting up your own account that has password access.
Okay.
And then also changing it to, oh, actually, let me pull up SSMS right now. I can quickly show you. 2 seconds here. And let me change my share to, go. All right, can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you have SSMS, the only couple things that you'll need to set up for your decisions installation, and I know we have it linked, but just so you can see it, is you'll need to set up just a login for your decisions server.
Okay.
In my case, I'm just using the SA with a different password associated with it. So so I could just poke that open, and the only thing you'll need to make sure here is that if you use SA, that you have your a new password set up, and then that it has the ability to, or that it has all the it has the ability to log in, which SA by default doesn't. So you would have to go to status and change this to login enabled, because by default SA login is disabled.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just see a blue box. I didn't realize you had something else loaded on there.
Nope. Sorry.
I see the left panel, but I don't see anything in the right.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Let me see here. Probably for security reasons, which makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay.
It's essentially this. So you see this SA here?
Yes.
You would just need to go to its properties and make there's a radio button to set it to allow login access.
Gotcha. Okay.
As well as changing password. And then after you do that, the only other change you have to make for decisions is by default, if you're doing SQL Server Express, you have to right click your database and then go to properties. And what it does is there's an action to change the let me find it. Under the security section, there's a server authentication option, and by default, it's Windows authentication mode, and you need to change to SQL Server into Windows authentication mode. And then once you do that, you restart your SQL Server, and it's perfectly set up. That should be spelled out in the instructions on the guide. I'm just going to make sure. Expects. This looks. Yeah. So set up your, and then just be aware that you may have to restart your SQL Server after you make those changes. That's, I think, the only thing it doesn't say here, but should be fine. All right. Okay. There you go. And yeah, Amber went ahead and linked you in the chat those two guides.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Excuse me. All right. Any other questions? Feel free to ask, guys. We got plenty of time. And while we're waiting for potential questions, I'm gonna just work on what I've been working on today, which is a notification module for decisions, which will let you set up kind of an easy data design user interface for people who want to create notifications in your system, but you don't want to have them give them access to decisions flows. So if you do have, oh, hold on. Oh, gotcha. Oh, actually, that's fine. If we don't have any questions in the next couple of minutes, we'll just go ahead and end it a few minutes early, and that'll be perfectly fine. And let me see if I got any response back from my devs about that question. No, it looks like I'm gonna have to dig in a little bit farther with my dev. He gave me a couple of options as to why that counter may not be going up and perfectly corresponding to the failed state, Muriel, but I might actually disagree with his assessment. So
Okay.
I'll probably actually follow up with him and see, because while I was trying to set up an example, I actually had mine intentionally set up to fail a lot, and it wasn't syncing the counter to how often I expected it to fail. So I'll probably argue with him a little bit.
No worries.
All right, guys, if there's no other questions, it's 12:45. I'll go ahead and give you guys 15 minutes of your day back. Thank you so much for attending today's Lunch and Learn, and we'll continue hosting these every day. So tomorrow should be either Will or Josh. All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ben.